Max, welcome to the future. Try this. Is it a highly developed plant-based protein, or is it ethically sourced cultured meat grown in a massive bioreactor? You tell me.
I think I'll pass on the unlabeled future goo, Ava. Welcome back to Fluent Talk, everyone. I'm Max, and that's Ava attempting to poison me with tomorrow's dinner. Today, we're diving into the future of food, starting with sustainable diets.
Exactly. The world needs to feed billions, but traditional agriculture is causing environmental catastrophe. So which path is more sustainable? Cultured meat or going completely plant-based? This is a question of carbon footprint versus ethical sourcing.
Cultured meat is the only scalable solution for food security. It requires drastically less land and water than traditional farming. The reduction in the carbon footprint alone from cutting out cattle is a massive win for the planet. It allows people to eat the same product but with a clear conscience.
But it's still an industrialized process. We are missing the point of ethical sourcing. Plant-based diets focus on returning land to nature, diversifying crops, and drastically lowering our carbon footprint immediately. Cultured meat is just a highly technological, expensive fix that still depends on complex industrial inputs.
You cannot ignore consumer behavior, Ava. Most people will never voluntarily give up meat completely. Cultured meat provides the necessary protein structure and taste experience to ensure mass adoption, thus solving the food security problem faster than relying on billions of people to adhere to strict dietary restrictions.
I understand the efficiency argument, but the core conflict is ethical. Do we rely on highly complex, patented lab science, cultured meat, or do we rely on natural, holistic food systems? The ethical sourcing of the inputs for the bioreactors themselves is still questionable. We're already using terms like cultured meat, carbon footprint, and food security. Stick around to the end of the episode to get the full list of today's essential vocabulary. You don't want to miss our recap.
The future requires both innovation and ethics. We need the efficiency of cultured meat for food security and the low carbon footprint of plant-based systems to save the planet. But first, let's tackle the safety of our food.
Exactly. Before we eat it, we need to know if it's safe. Next, we ask, are genetically modified organisms safe and necessary or inherently risky? Exactly. Before we eat it, we need to know if it's safe. Next, we ask, are genetically modified organisms, GMOs, safe and necessary or inherently risky?
The scientific consensus is overwhelming, Ava. Genetic modification is safe. It's a precise tool that allows us to create crops resistant to disease and pests, which is crucial for maximizing global food security and dramatically reducing reliance on chemical pesticides. It's an essential weapon against food waste.
I respect the science, but the public fear is rooted in legitimate concerns about biosafety. We are talking about altering the basic building blocks of life. We don't have 50-year studies on the long-term impact on human health. Furthermore, using wide-scale monoculture, relying on just one type of GMO, increases the risk of systemic failure.
The Frankenfood fear is based on misinformation and a lack of scientific literacy. Genetic modification is just a faster, more targeted form of the traditional breeding that farmers have been doing for centuries. Instead of 10 years of crossbreeding, we can solve food security problems in a season. And speaking of monoculture, traditional farming practices also rely heavily on it too. GMOs at least offer the tools to fight the devastating effects of pests.
My headache isn't from the science, Max. It's from the ethics. The problem isn't the tomato. It's the corporate control. Genetic modification means a few powerful companies control the seed market, forcing farmers into dependency and threatening the diversity of local food systems. This lack of ethical sourcing is what the public truly fears, not just the modified gene itself.
That's a valid concern about the labor market and corporate structure, but it's separate from the biosafety of the product. If we reject GMOs, we accept higher food waste rates and massive challenges to food security in developing nations. We must prioritize feeding the world efficiently, and genetic modification is the best tool we have to achieve that resource optimization. We've just used technical terms like genetic modification, biosafety, and monoculture. If you want to understand the future of your dinner plate, stay with us until the very end. We will define food security and food waste in the vocabulary summary.
Ultimately, we need transparency. The power of genetic modification is immense, but it must be governed by stringent biosafety protocols and a commitment to independent research, not just corporate profits.
Speaking of innovative solutions, if we can't agree on what to grow in the field, maybe we should move the field indoors. Next, vertical farming, the urban solution to feeding the world.
Speaking of innovative solutions, if we can't agree on what to grow in the field, maybe we should move the field indoors. Next, vertical farming, the urban solution to feeding the world.
I must admit, the aesthetics of vertical farming are stunning. The idea of growing fresh produce in abandoned warehouses right in the heart of the city, that's true urban agriculture. It promises to cut out long-haul transport and give everyone access to hyper-local food.
It's not just aesthetics, it's resource optimization. Hydroponics and vertical farming use up to 95% less water than traditional methods, and you can grow year-round, completely independent of weather patterns. It uses existing infrastructure, turning obsolete buildings into food factories, and that is a massive step for global food security. Imagine a 10-story building producing the same yield as 1,000 acres of farmland. That is incredible engineering. That's how we truly solve the urban food security crisis.
Calm down, engineer. While I love your enthusiasm, we need to talk about the cost of living for the plants. The primary drawback of vertical farming is the extreme energy consumption required for lighting and climate control. Unless that energy comes from completely renewable sources, the hidden carbon footprint is massive, making the final produce prohibitively expensive.
That's a solvable problem. Technology will drive down the cost of LED lighting and solar energy. We can't let current limitations stop us from pursuing urban agriculture that provides fresh nutritional value to areas that are currently food deserts. This is about resilience. It's about minimizing risk from climate change.
It's a fantastic supplemental technology for high-value herbs and leafy greens, yes, but it hasn't proven its economic viability for staple crops like wheat or rice. So while it's great for resource optimization, it's a niche solution, not the full answer to food security. We've just discussed vertical farming, hydroponics, and urban agriculture. If you're interested in innovative food technology, stay with us until the very end. We will define resource optimization and infrastructure in the vocabulary summary.
Whether it's lab-grown or tower-grown, the ultimate goal is health. Next, let's talk about the health of the consumer. Should we heavily tax the biggest culprit in our public health crisis, high-sugar processed foods?
Whether it's lab-grown or tower-grown, the ultimate goal is health. Next, let's talk about the health of the consumer. Should we heavily tax the biggest culprit in our public health crisis, high-sugar processed foods?
Absolutely. We are facing a global public health crisis driven by chronic diseases linked to poor diet. Implementing a sugar tax on all high-sugar processed foods is a form of paternalistic governance, yes, but it's a necessary tool to deter consumption and subsidize healthier options.
That is classic nanny state thinking. A sugar tax is a regressive tax. It disproportionately affects low-income families who rely on cheap processed foods. This is an issue of digital literacy and nutritional value education, not punitive taxation that restricts consumer choice.
Consumer choice? Max, sugar is in everything. It's harder to find a bottle of water without a hidden sweetener than it is to find gold. We're so wired into that dopamine loop from sugar that we need a financial jolt, a sugar tax, to break the cycle and force us to look at the nutritional value.
The key function of the tax, however, is flawed. Studies show that people often just shift their consumption to other cheap, high-calorie foods or simply absorb the extra cost of living without changing their habits. The money should be spent on improving the affordability and accessibility of foods with high nutritional value through positive subsidies, not through punishment.
But the government is spending billions treating the resulting public health crisis, diabetes, heart disease, etc. The sugar tax is simply forcing the external costs of poor diet back onto the corporations that profit from the sale of addictive processed foods. It's an ethical mandate to protect the collective health of the nation.
We've just discussed sugar tax, processed foods, and public health crisis. If you care about what's on your plate, stay with us until the very end. We will define nutritional value and public health crisis in the vocabulary summary. The debate isn't about whether we should eat healthier, but how we achieve it. The sugar tax is a blunt instrument. We need more nuanced solutions that focus on nutritional value education without punishing those already struggling with the cost of living.
Exactly. We need personal discipline, not just policy. That leads us perfectly to our final health debate. Intermittent fasting and keto. Are these just passing fad diets or powerful tools for metabolic health? Exactly. We need personal discipline, not just policy. That leads us perfectly to our final health debate. Intermittent fasting and keto. Are these just passing fad diets or powerful tools for metabolic health?
There's a massive difference between a fad diet and a scientifically supported tool. Intermittent fasting, IF, is not a diet, it's an eating schedule. Research strongly suggests that it can improve metabolic health by regulating insulin and promoting cellular repair. It's a powerful tool for longevity.
But anytime you introduce severe dietary restrictions, you risk turning something healthy into an obsession. Keto, for example, is incredibly restrictive and unsustainable for the average person. Most of these popular trends fail the test of long-term sustainability and often lead to disordered eating patterns. I tried the keto diet for 3 weeks max. By day 20, I was dreaming about bread. The sheer mental energy required to maintain those strict dietary restrictions was worse than the public health crisis we talked about. It proved that for me, it was nothing more than a temporary fad diet.
That's the key, Ava. Long-term compliance. But if used correctly, intermittent fasting can be incredibly simple and non-restrictive in terms of what you eat, just when you eat. It's an effective way to manage weight and blood sugar, which addresses a huge part of the global public health crisis.
The danger lies in the quick fix mentality. When people try complex dietary restrictions like keto, because they're advertised as a magic bullet, they ignore the true need for balanced, sustainable nutrition. We need to focus on whole, ethical sourcing foods, not the latest fad diet trend that promises instant results. We've just discussed intermittent fasting, metabolic health, and fad diets. If you're considering changing your eating habits, stay with us until the very end. We will define dietary restrictions and sustainability in the vocabulary summary.
The future of food isn't about one magic cure. It's about making smart choices, whether that's in the supermarket, the lab, or when we decide to skip breakfast. What a journey through the modern plate. Now let's move on to our final segment. The future of food isn't about one magic cure. It's about making smart choices, whether that's in the supermarket, the lab, or when we decide to skip breakfast. What a journey through the modern plate. Now let's move on to our final segment.
Exactly. It's time for your essential vocabulary takeaway. We've chosen 7 essential terms to help you discuss global food and health policy in depth. Listen closely. First, cultured meat. This refers to real meat produced by cultivating animal cells in a lab without the need to slaughter animals. Example, cultured meat is an option for ethical sourcing.
Next, carbon footprint. This is the total amount of greenhouse gases generated by our actions, often measured in carbon dioxide. Example, eating less red meat reduces your carbon footprint significantly.
Third, food security. This refers to the state of having reliable access to a sufficient quantity of affordable, nutritious food. Example, vertical farming aims to improve urban food security.
Fourth, biosafety. This refers to the protocols and policies used to prevent the large-scale loss of biological integrity, particularly in relation to GMOs. Example, biosafety regulations ensure the testing of genetically modified food.
Fifth, vertical farming. This is the practice of growing crops in vertically stacked layers, often indoors and in controlled environments. Example, vertical farming uses hydroponics to save water.
Sixth, sugar tax. This is a specific tax levied on drinks or foods that are high in sugar, intended to discourage consumption. Example, the sugar tax is meant to fight the public health crisis.
And finally, intermittent fasting. This is an eating pattern that cycles between periods of eating and voluntary fasting. Example, intermittent fasting is linked to improved metabolic health.
What a fascinating look at our diets, from the farm to the lab. Thank you for challenging your assumptions and learning with us, Ava.
Our final question for you. Do you support the implementation of a sugar tax, or do you believe it violates consumer choice? We want to see your most logical arguments in the comments below.
Remember to hit that subscribe button. We post a brand new episode with fresh debates and more essential vocabulary every single day at 6 a.m. on the English Easy channel.
We'll see you next time. Bye for now.